Thank you very much. I'm Senator Graham from South Carolina, here with a bipartisan group of United States senators to make a clear statement in uncertain times. What Turkey did in Syria is unacceptable. Turkey's incursion into Syria hurts America's national security. It puts at risk our Kurdish allies who were there for us when nobody else was on the ground. And the Syrian Democratic Forces were the ground troops to destroy the caliphate. About 2,700 Americans, God bless them all, but the infantry for the assault on Raqqa and destroying the caliphate in Syria were the Syrian Democratic Forces, and we believe that Erdogan's decision to go into Syria puts our allies at risk. We believe that the rise of ISIS is imminent if this continues. We appreciate what the president did with sanctions against Turkey. We're here to add to it, to supplement what the president did, and let Turkey know there are three branches of government. I doubt if the court can do much, but Congress is going to speak with a very firm, singular voice that we will impose sanctions in the strongest measure possible against this Turkish outrage that will lead to the reemergence of ISIS, the destruction of an ally, the Kurds, and eventually benefit to Iran at the detriment of Israel. I will briefly go over what's in the bill, but I would like to make a statement that the House passed yesterday a resolution urging the president to change course inside of Syria, 354 to 60. I believe that same resolution, if brought to the floor of the United States Senate, would get over 80 votes, and I'm urging Senator McConnell and Senator Schumer to find a way to do that, because people are literally dying as we speak, and we want the president to be successful. Secretary Pompeo and Vice President Pence are meeting with Turkey as I speak. I called this morning to Jeffries, our envoy regarding Syria, to tell him that we would be here at 12:30 East Coast time and let Turkey know that the sanctions by the administration are just the first step in what I think will be a crippling journey. And the way you end this is for Turkey to withdraw to the areas before the invasion, for them to stop operations against our Kurdish allies, and to reset the table. And what we're doing here is we're sanctioning top Turkish officials beyond what the administration did, restricting visa access to the country, asking a deep dive into Erdogan's personal finances. We're issuing sanctions against the Turkish armed forces, and I find it outrageous that F-16s designed by the United States are being used to bomb a good ally. We're going to sanction the Halk Bank, which was involved in some very nefarious activity trying to get around Iranian sanctions. We're considering the purchase of the S-400, the Russian missile system, to be a significant event, mandating CATSA sanctions to be imposed within 30 days, prohibit U.S. military assistance, prohibit any U.S. person from purchasing sovereign debt from the government of Turkey. These are wide-ranging and hard-hitting, and I will turn it over to Senator Van Hollen with one last thought. The Turkish-U.S. relationship is worth salvaging. It cannot be salvaged until Erdogan changes course. They're a NATO ally, and I find it incredible that a NATO ally is going to be attacking the ground component most significantly responsible for the destruction of ISIS. So to the average American, what does this matter to you? I think it matters a lot that ISIS cannot reemerge. The caliphate's destroyed, but they're alive and well in terms of a ground component, 15 to 20,000 fighters. And without the Kurds, they're going to come back. And if we abandon the Kurds, good luck to get anybody to help you in the future. Israel. The nightmare for Israel is for Iran to be the biggest winner of the vacuum we've created by withdrawing from Syria. If they come down and take the oil in Syria, they get richer, and Israel gets surrounded even more strongly than they are today by Iran. So at the end of the day, this is about Israel, it's about ISIS, it is about Iran, and aligning with Assad is not a good outcome for the United States. If the Kurds are forced to align with Assad, they're aligning with Iran. And I cannot think of a worse outcome for U.S. national security interest to abandon the Kurdish forces who helped us, force them into the arms of the Iranians at the expense of American national security and prestige, and to ensure the rise of ISIS. Our Kurdish friends cannot do it all. And for a few hundred troops, we can fix this problem. We need to reset, get Turkey to stand down. These sanctions, I think, will receive a large bipartisan vote, and they're going to stay in place until Turkey changes its behavior. Senator Van Hollen.
Thank you, Senator Graham. Let me start by saying that Maryland and the country have lost an incredible leader and hero with the passing of Elijah Cummings. He was a good friend. He was one of Maryland's favorite sons, and to my mind, he was a hero for our times, and we're going to miss his sense of dignity and his sense of principle. And it is that sense of principle and standing up for America and our values around the world that brings us here today. And I think it's not a surprise to anybody that Senator Graham and I don't agree on lots of things.
Could you say that again?
We don't agree on a lot of things, but we do agree. We do agree this is a precarious moment for our country and our role in the world. And when we first learned of the President's decision and Turkey's response, we both had the same reaction. First, to call upon the President to do everything in his power to undo the damage that's been caused, but also that we in this Congress have a bipartisan responsibility to stand up for America's role in the world. And I'm very pleased that we're joined here today by a bipartisan group of senators, Senator Shaheen, Senators Blumenthal, and Senators Blackburn, and others who are joining us in this effort. We agree that we need swift and bipartisan action to repair the damage caused by the decision to allow Turkey to attack our chief partner in the fight against ISIS terrorists, and to make sure that we stop the revival of ISIS. The Syrian Kurds have been the tip of the spear in our fight against ISIS and its reemergence, and we cannot abandon them. So the Senate should immediately vote on the bipartisan resolution that Senator Graham mentioned that passed the House yesterday, but then move immediately to take up the bill that we're introducing today. I think we all recognize that much damage has already been done. As Senator Graham said, Russia, Assad, Iran, and ISIS are moving quickly to fill the void, but we can demonstrate in a bipartisan way that American leadership matters here in the Congress and take the measures that we're calling for today. We got to send a message. We have to send a message that America will stand with our allies in the fight against terrorism, and that we will fight to make sure ISIS does not get more oxygen and come back. They have been down, but they are not out, and this action that's been taken gives them an opportunity to come back, and we cannot allow that to happen. That is the result of the decisions that have been made in the Turkish aggression. I just want to hold up a headline that tells you what the problem is here. It's right here. Turkish-backed forces are freeing Islamic State prisoners. Turkish-backed forces are freeing Islamic State prisoners. We can't expect the Syrian Kurds to be detaining ISIS prisoners and fighting for their lives, fighting against ISIS when they're fighting for their lives in Turkey. So we're doing the one thing in our power here in the United States Congress to stop the slaughter of Syrian Kurds. And by the way, this is ethnic cleansing going on. The Turkish proxies that are engaged in this fight include a lot of al-Nusra elements. They've got al-Qaeda DNA. They are intent on wiping out the Syrian Kurds. And we're doing everything within our power to stop the resurgence of ISIS. Senator Graham mentioned what the bill would do. He went through the items in the bill. What I want to stress is that it's in Turkey's power to avoid these sanctions. Amen. We wish we were not here imposing these sanctions. And these sanctions would be lifted immediately if Turkey stops killing our Syrian Kurdish allies, if Turkey stops enabling the rise of ISIS, and if Turkey moves itself and its proxy forces back to where they were before this invasion. In fact, if Turkey took those actions now, these sanctions would not go into place. And I agree with Senator Graham. We want Turkey as an ally, but they are testing their role within NATO. With this action and with their previous acceptance of delivery of the Russian S-400 air defense system. But we do not want these sanctions to have to go into effect, but in order to make it clear to the world, we'll stand by our Syrian Kurdish partners to stop the resurgence of ISIS and to make sure that those things happen. We are insisting that this will take place if Turkey doesn't act to protect all of our interests. And so now it's my privilege to turn the podium over to Senator Marsha Blackburn from Tennessee.
Thank you, Senator Van Hollen. And he and I have been in agreement for a very long time on the importance of standing with the Kurds. And when we were each House members, we co-chaired the Kurdish caucus. And the reason I was involved with it is because of the population of Kurds that call Nashville in Tennessee home. And the Kurds have stood with us without fail. They have been resolute in their ability to push back on evil. They have been resolute in pushing back on ISIS, and they have lost thousands of lives. And the Kurds that have been there fighting, making certain that we had this safe area, making certain that the SDF was holding these ISIS prisoners. This is something that is not lost on us, and it is not lost on them. Now, as you have heard, Turkey could stop this right now if they wanted to. And looking at our NATO allies, we hope that Turkey will receive a message that it is important for them to stop this. And I want to commend Senator Graham. I want to commend Senator Van Hollen for bringing the legislation forward. Sanctions are important. And it is important to realize that we will not stop. This is not going to be the last step. This is the first step to make certain that all that we have fought for, the gains that we have made, are not going to be pushed aside because of Turkey's aggression.
Good afternoon. I'm pleased to join my colleagues here, both Republican and Democrat, to address the tragic disaster in Syria. Senator Graham and I had the opportunity to visit northeastern Syria last year. We walked around the markets where families felt safe to do their shopping. We broke bread with our Kurdish and Arab partners. Everywhere we went, we saw children flashing V signs when they saw the American members of our military. And what we heard over and over again from the Kurds, from the Syrians, from the Arabs who we met with was, please don't let the United States abandon us. Well, that's exactly what we've done. And it is heartbreaking to see how things have changed, to see those videos where Kurds are being killed by Turkish fighters with their hands tied behind their back. We have seen the worst case scenario in the region that many of us standing here have long feared, and make no mistake, the seeds of where we are today began when the administration withheld the stabilization dollars for northeast Syria, and when in December of 2018, President Trump announced that he was going to withdraw troops from Syria. That sent a very strong signal to Turkey and to President Erdogan. And now in just 1 week, we have undone 5 years of hard-fought stability in northeastern Syria. And President Erdogan needs to hear an unequivocal message of opposition to this incursion. That's what these sanctions hopefully will help send a message. We can't undo the damage that's already been done, but we can demonstrate to President Erdogan that it's not just President Trump who speaks for American foreign policy, it's also the Congress. And I want to especially thank Senators Graham and Van Hollen for their leadership. And also point out that I believe the president should withdraw his invitation to President Erdogan to come be his guest here. It is totally unacceptable when people are being killed because of Turkey's actions and because of this president's decision that we are extending hospitality and niceties to President Erdogan in the White House of the United States of America. So I believe that state visit needs to be canceled, and it needs to be canceled immediately. With that, let me turn it over to Senator Blumenthal.
Thanks. My thanks to Senator Graham and Senator Van Hollen, and just for the people of South Carolina. I do disagree a lot with Senator Graham, but I think.
I agree with a lot.
But let me just emphasize a really important point here. Having sat through this morning a classified, top-secret briefing from the Secretary of Defense and the Chairman of the Joint Chiefs of Staff, my feeling was horror and shame. To the people of the United States, you should feel horror and shame and deep disappointment in the abdication of leadership and our values by your leaders. President Trump has abdicated leadership. The Congress must act. The Congress must act to stop ISIS from resurging, which is happening right now, unfolding in real time, right before our eyes, making a potential mockery of the lives lost, the bloodshed, the sacrifices made by our men and women in uniform and partners who have fought with them and lost lives with them. And there is nothing more basic to a great nation than its word. When its promises are broken, its credibility is lost as a partner and an ally and as an adversary. And Americans should feel horror, shame, and deep disappointment that that lasting damage is being done to America's credibility. The windfall here is to Iran and Russia. Again, to Vladimir Putin. Why always is Putin the winner? This kind of shredding of American credibility will do lasting damage. We may not be able to unscramble the egg, but we can undo at least some of the damage, and that will be the result of strong, stiff sanctions imposed swiftly in this act. This measure gut punches Turkey where it hurts. And that is what is necessary to get Erdogan's attention, to force him to roll back this foolhardy and tyrannical step. The American people deserve to hear what we heard today behind closed doors, and I said as much in that hearing. Absolutely. They deserve to hear all of the facts on the ground, so they will know what can and should be done to reverse this misguided policy. And let me just say, and I never thought I would say this about the United States of America, we are going to be complicit in the ethnic cleansing that occurs as a result of this absolutely abhorrent action. We will be held responsible, and rightly so, by history for the potential genocide that will occur in that region if we fail to act. History will haunt us if we continue to retreat from those basic principles. And I can say that we're going to have strong bipartisan support for this measure. The best sign of it is the numbers of our colleagues who want to support it now and I look forward to gaining support as we go forward. Thank you.
Senator Graham, the president has long been reluctant to put any pressure on Erdogan, including after they bought the Russian defense system.
Yeah.
Do you worry that Erdogan no longer has any fear or respect of the United States and is going to ignore anything that the Congress does?
Well, number one, I want to compliment the administration for imposing sanctions, and I think they're real. Tariffs on Turkish steel will matter to Turkey. Now, we'll pay a heavier price here, but I think it's a price worth paying to restore your honor. And this is about restoring our honor. And I don't need to lecture the American people about ISIS. If you missed the last 4 years, you missed a lot. If you think they're just going to Europe, you're kidding yourself, because they want us more than anybody else. They're out to destroy Israel if they can. The Kurds, in their eyes, are the enemy, not an ally. So the bottom line is, I think what the administration has done has gotten Turkey's attention, but clearly hasn't worked. The president did not give a green light, but Erdogan went in anyway, and that's the problem. The reason we're doing this is China's watching. Russia's watching. Iran is watching. And I want them to know that you will not get a pass. If you do something in Hong Kong, you're going to get hit harder than we're doing today. If you move into parts of Eastern Europe, Russia, we're still here and we're going to hold you accountable. Iran, if you keep threatening the neighborhood, more is coming your way. So not only is it important to restore the credibility we lost with Erdogan, it's important to restore our position in the world and let others know what comes our way.
Let me just, I'd like
Yeah.
to respond to that as well. So Erdogan clearly listened to President Trump on that phone call. And the message he got was, go ahead and attack the Syrian Kurds. That's obviously the way Erdogan interpreted it. Right now, the president has said that he is going to, quote, destroy Turkey's economy if they keep doing what they're doing. And my question is, for God's sakes, when are you going to act? The slaughter is going on right now. The sanctions on Turkish steel were the same sanctions the president put on Turkey when we had a pastor who was in Turkish, was held by Turkey. They represent 0.4% of all of Turkey's exports. So my goodness, the president, if he wants to act, he has the authority today to undertake a lot of the sanctions that we're calling for. And he should do it. But the point we're making here today is, in the absence of presidential action to stand up for the principles and values and support our allies and stop the resurgence of ISIS, we will act on a bipartisan basis.
Senator, an early version of your bill included the personal direct sanctions against Erdogan.
Abigail, you're next.
Do you think President Trump will sign these sanctions if they pass?
My hope is that he will see them as leverage. I don't know what Pompeo and Pence are going to accomplish today. Hope they can accomplish a ceasefire, stop the bloodshed. You know, Marcia has spoken very eloquently about the Kurds. I mean, you know, if we stand on the sidelines and these people get rolled over, God help us all in the future, right? So I think President Trump's team is on the ground trying to talk sense to Erdogan. But I called this morning. I want Turkey to understand it's just not Trump and Pence and Pompeo. It's the rest of us. And I'm hoping that bipartisan, wide and deep, I'm hoping that this will help their hand. But I think if we had a vote on these sanctions, it would be veto-proof. And I would hope that President Trump would welcome them.
Senator, can I ask about the military assistance prohibition? Senator Graham,
Yeah.
How does the prohibition on military assistance comport with sort of NATO missions and Incirlik Air Base, the sort of ongoing military operations?
Yeah, I think it's complicated, but I think what we're trying to do is make sure that American-made F-16s are no longer used to bomb Kurdish allies. We're trying to send a signal that the purchase of the S-400, whatever problems we had before, have just gotten worse. And if you want to be a NATO ally, you got to act like a NATO ally. Can you imagine any NATO country invading Syria to the benefit of ISIS? That's what they're doing. They're invading Syria to the benefit of ISIS. They have a concern about YPG elements in Syria. I get that. I've been saying that for years. I told President Erdogan, this is not the solution to dismember the coalition we put together to destroy ISIS. And it was you, President Erdogan, who allowed the ISIS fighters to flow in to begin with.
Senator Graham.
Anybody else? Yeah.
Senator Graham, why do you think that President Trump listened to you last December when he wanted to quickly withdraw?
Good question.
And why he's not listening to you now? Do you think it's election year politics? And do you, what specific assurances did President Erdogan make in the phone call you participated in to President Trump?
Okay, so let's walk through this. The one thing I want you to know is that President Trump did not wake up 2 weeks ago and say, hey, Erdogan, you can have Syria. In December, he announced a withdrawal. To President Trump's credit, we reconfigured that withdrawal. We slowed it down. We reassured the Kurds that we're not going to abandon you. We to create a safe zone, tried to create a safe zone where Turkey would feel that we're sympathetic to the Kurdish problem. The YPG Kurds in the eyes of Turkey are terrorists. Well, for us, they were allies. So we're trying to accommodate both interests. And what happened is that Erdogan called the president a couple of weeks ago and accused our generals of slow walking the safe zone that we helped create, lying, and that he could not tolerate it anymore. So it's not like President Trump just woke up one day and said, I'm tired of Syria. Erdogan called him and said, I am going to go in. The president counseled him not to, but the problem we have, it did not work. And here's what I fear. If it doesn't work with Erdogan, it's not going to work with Xi, and it's not going to work with the Ayatollah. So I think now's the moment for the president to embrace bipartisanship, to work with the Congress. Let us be your partner to get a common objective. The objective is to reset the table, stay in touch with the Kurds so they won't get slaughtered, make sure ISIS doesn't come back, make sure Iran doesn't capture the oil fields, and give Turkey some reasonable sense of security. That can only happen if we stop the bloodshed, and I see no scenario where we can achieve our national security interests if we go to zero in terms of troops.
The Erdogan assurances, sir? The Erdogan assurances in the phone
I
call?
just want to add something to that, because it's not just about passing the sanctions bill or sending the Vice President and the Secretary of State to meet with President Erdogan. President Trump needs to send a very strong signal to President Erdogan that he himself does not approve of what's going on in Syria. That's why I say, rescind your invitation to President Erdogan. Let him know that you don't approve of what he's doing, and we're not going to be nice to him until he changes his behavior.
Yeah, I would just add that the action that President Trump took after that earlier phone call from Erdogan was to withdraw our special forces, which obviously left the Syrian Kurds vulnerable. We are now doing our best to salvage a very difficult situation. I want to stress that the president has the authority today to do a lot more than the pinprick steel measure that he undertook. He could do a lot in this bill today, but what we are saying is that we're moving one way or another on a bipartisan basis to stand up for American values, to do what's right by our allies, and to stop the resurgence of ISIS.
We got one more question. I've got to go.
Lisa from PBS. I want to understand what you're saying here as far as, I understand sanctions, but do you think it's even possible for the president to return American troops now in a way that creates a safe zone? That's question one. And question two, speaking about America and global leadership and how this president is seen, he has just announced since we've been here that he is going to hold the G7 summit at his resort in Florida. Do you think that affects how he's seen as a leader and what his interests are?
Well, I think it'd be a nice trip. I hope to go down there myself. So I'm not here, my differences with the presidents are real. Nobody asked me, is Obama unfit for office if he withdraws from Iraq? So it's not about personality. It's about policy. So here's what I hope will happen. I hope that President Trump will seize the opportunity to work with us for the greater good. I hope he'll listen to his generals. He made a remark about me, I want to be there 1,000 years. No, I want to be there long enough until we're safe. If it were up to me, the lion would be laying down with the lamb. I have been in war zones. I've spent 33 years in the military, and I've had some friends killed. So this is no casual thing for me. I don't love war. What I crave is security. for my country and my allies. Mr. President, if you don't understand that ISIS is coming back, you're missing a lot of good advice. If you don't understand these bastards would kill us all if they could, you're not listening to what they're saying. And if you abandon these Kurds, it would be a stain on your presidency and our honor. And how do you fix this? You lead. You tell Erdogan, I am speaking for a nation now. I have the backing of the United States Congress. We will not tolerate this. We want a good relationship, but you're destroying it. And I have the backing of the United States Congress. I've got the backing of people who want to impeach me. And I got the backing of people who are going to defend me. And what I want to have happen here is for Erdogan to stand down before it's too late, get out of Syria, give us a chance to deal with your legitimate concerns. Do not abandon the Kurds, Mr. President. Some of our troops need to stay involved in the counter-ISIS fight because there's 15 to 20,000 ISIS fighters still on the loose inside of Syria. The day we leave will be when we can say we are safe. Every military leader, Mr. President, believes we need a few hundred of us to keep the ISIS fight going in a positive direction. 10,000, I think, Kurds were injured or killed. Every one of them that went down was one of us that didn't have to go down. This is a model that works, Mr. President. You had a very light footprint. We provided air power, and we destroyed the caliphate with 8 casualties in the last 4 years on the American side. God bless the 8. So what am I urging? Just listen to the commanders. Don't listen to Rand Paul. Don't listen to me. We'll go play golf, and we'll talk about golf. If you don't think I don't know what I'm talking about, that I'm a warmonger and want to stay forever, just write me off. All I'm asking is that you do what President Obama did not do. Listen and adjust. You have an opportunity here to reset the table with a configuration of American forces in the hundreds, not the thousands, that will reassure a valuable ally, keep Iran from being the biggest winner, and protect our friends in Israel. If you continue on the course you're on, you will have brought a lot of damage to the nation. You'll abandon a valuable ally. You would set in the motion the reemergence of ISIS. And Mr. President, as much as I like you and want to work with you, I am going to be consistent. I will hold you accountable.
And let me just answer that question from a military standpoint. The answer is yes. Based on publicly available knowledge, the answer is yes. We have the resources to act.
We still can get back.
Let me just say in closing here that over the congressional break, I was in Afghanistan with Senator Hassan and talking to our commanders on the ground. 2 takeaways. One, some of them had been arm in arm with our Syrian Kurdish partners in their earlier deployments in the fight against ISIS. And for them, the president's action was one of the most shameful days. The second is we heard from our commanders that their bigger concern these days in Afghanistan, it's not al-Qaeda, although that remains a concern, but the rise of ISIS Khorasan in Afghanistan, taking direction from the folks, ISIS folks who are in, remain in Syria and Iraq. So while they've lost some territory, they were already, unfortunately, alive and kicking before the decision by the president and the action by Erdogan and Turkish forces. But now they've been given new fuel and new oxygen. And we cannot stand for that. And we in Congress must do our part. Sanctions are never a perfect tool, but we have to do what's within our power as a bipartisan group of senators to do what's right. So thank you all very much.
Clarify something about troops. Are you hoping that some troops remain? Have you gotten word that like just a few hundred will? Like what is actually happening with U.S. troops? Are all of them leaving? Can you clarify what's that?
It's not clear to me exactly what's happening. And as you know, things come out of the White House that change by the hour. And so the answer is I don't know. What we are saying is that we need to move quickly to put in place these sanctions. They're tough sanctions, but they can be avoided or they will be lifted when Turkey stops slaughtering our allies, the Syrian Kurds, stops helping the resurgence of ISIS, and takes itself and its proxies back to where they were before their attack.